It looks like everything got reset, so I'm going to have to add our intro again. So we are going to be starting without an intro today. Oh my gosh, I was not expecting that. So sorry. Welcome. It's Saturday. It's the weekend. How has everyone survived? You found Surviving Together, a safe space for trauma survivors to connect and build community on their healing journey, as well as providing trauma-related education for all. So far today, we have Crystal is joining us. And Crystal, I want to congratulate you on be sticking to your walking goal each day and even being able to increase it on some days. I think that's absolutely amazing. And asked, how can you get a book? Well, you, I believe that the um, electronic version will be available on Amazon as soon as we launch, November 6th. However, it will be um, I was told like 6 weeks until I can till I'll actually get my physical copies of the books. So I will let you know because I will also be raffling off some copies of the book here on the channel as soon as I get them in my possession. So I don't know if that will be before the end of the year or if it will be beginning of next year. I know that they have gone to print. Um, as you, if you were here with us on Wednesday or watched the replay, um, we have signed off on our print versions. So we're just going to be waiting to get the physical books. So as soon as I get the books, Crystal, I will let you know. How about that? And then we can arrange for actually mailing them to you, actually getting you one. So I hope everyone is doing well on this Saturday afternoon. We are going to be covering the latest in trauma news, psychological trauma news, and I've got some really interesting stories that just for some of them, for me, just kind of highlighted how science is catching up with what we already knew from the social sciences. So the hard sciences, science. Oh, there's more than one. Hard science is catching up to social science in terms of things that we already knew or suspected about trauma. So, the first story I want to bring to you is about research that the VA, the Veterans Association, has been doing with um, an organization called the National PTSD Brain Bank, which, as it states, it is a brain bank, a tissue bank, and they have been analyzing along with a another organization called the Consortium to Alleviate PTSD. They have been analyzing brain tissue in donors, and they have actually identified molecular changes through advanced brain imaging such as like MRI, looking at how trauma affects brain structure and function and identifying actually subtypes of PTSD and how different types of PTSD, different levels of PTSD have affected the brain differently, the molecular structures. So something that we've already known that trauma affects our brain. It changes our brain chemistry, it changes our neural pathways. They are actually able to see this in dead tissue. They're under their microscopes. They're able to see the neurons and how they've changed from a standard neuron, from an unaffected neuron, a neuron unaffected by trauma. And the hope is by looking at this that they're going to be able to create more individualized therapies. I'm sure the pharmaceutical industry is going to be, looking at it in particular for more directed medications, hopefully, but also just realizing that not all PTSD is the same. It affects, trauma affects people differently. And this is something that we've known. But to see it in the brain, actually see the changes and to see that there are different types of PTSD, to me is absolutely fascinating. So, this is research that is going to be ongoing, but hang on, I'm checking my notes on this. So yeah, the research into particularly the subtypes is going to be ongoing. And like one of the things that they found, one study found that the subtype characterized by the executive function impairment, which is the prefrontal cortex, has more chronic PTSD and disrupted brain um, connectivity. So basically stating that some PTSD is worse than other PTSD in terms of the effects and severity of the effects. Further research is also being done on the differences in how PTSD affects men and women, which, as we've spoken before, trauma definitely affects men and women differently. PTSD affects women on an average of twice as much, and the severity of the effects are often worse for women than they are in men. So understanding the individual brain chemistry between male and female and why it is that women are affected. There's other studies that have been done in regards to this. So this is nothing brand new that there's a difference between the sexes. But the more that different studies are able to combine all their research, I'm sure somebody will put it together eventually, figuring out, this neuron affects is affected this way, and the amygdala is affected this way, and the prefrontal cortex is affected this way in women versus men. The more they're able to understand that from a hard science perspective, the better able that they're able to target individual therapies. And it's something that I've been seeing in more research is this drive to understand differences in trauma and to develop more unique treatment plans for people instead of a one size fits all. We're getting away from the you've got PTSD, you've got depression and anxiety as a result, so therefore you should get an SSRI or therefore you should get a this or a that. It's going much more towards individualized treatment, which I think is a fabulous thing because it recognizes that we are all individuals and trauma affects us differently. And some of us have cumulative trauma, and different sources of trauma, multiple sources of trauma. So the fact that they're looking at this as at a much more individual level to me is great. And it gives me, high hopes for the future as to how things are going to go. One of the other um, One of the other things that has been recent in the news for 2025, and I'll follow it up with from the VA, is the military is enacting a new rating system for mental health, recognizing the prevalence of people with PTSD. It's, estimated from the veterans who have come back from, like, say, the Iran and um, Iraq, Afghanistan wars, those, two combined, that 10 to 20% of veterans suffer PTSD. And I'd probably argue that that's much higher. Uh, just, personally. But, it depends. Were you in a forward role? Were you in a combat role? Were you just in a supportive role? Did you see violence? So just because you were assigned to the conflict doesn't mean that you were actually faced with some of these events that were traumatic for some of these people. Hey, DeAudrey, how you doing? Hi, James. Glad to see you. DeAudrey asks, why is it so hard to get an otherwise sensible and enlightened man to get therapy? You know, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say it's fear. Uh, I've had this in my experience as well, that people who are very rational, very logical beings, you try and get them into therapy and they're very resistant. One of the things I think it might be is their idea as to what therapy is. A lot of people have the notion of just talk therapy, right? That it's just going to be, they're going to be talking to a psychologist and they're supposed to reveal their, deepest, darkest secrets or something, or that they're going to be, you know, told this or that. So part of it is misconceptions, I think, as to what the therapy is going to entail. And I think that if you've got a good therapist, especially if the person who needs to go to therapy has some sort of, trauma in their past, whether that's CPTSD, childhood trauma, or something that happened in their adult life, that the type of therapy that they may get involved in is going to be very dependent on what is revealed that is the cause of their current issues. So you might want to speak to this person about what do they think therapy is going to entail? What what do they what vision do they have in their head? And why don't they want to go? And explain to them the different treatment methods that are out there. You know, the part of one of the things that I wanted to talk about today actually is the new guidelines that the American Psychology Association, the APA, has put out. And they they've done a lot of work, um, and this is in particular to treating PTSD or complex trauma, CPTSD. And they have looked upon everything that they've been doing in the past, and they've combined a lot of things and condensed things down into three guidelines, three documents that will help psychologists and therapists in dealing with somebody who comes to them with PTSD or CPTSD. Understanding that the type of intervention that needs to be done, the type of therapy that needs to be done, depends greatly on where the person is, what their source of trauma is, what their current effects are, how is it affecting their daily life today? You know, is the trauma one time? Is it from a life-threatening, accident that they had? Is it from childhood trauma that they had that was one sexual assault? Or was it ongoing physical abuse during childhood? Um, was it, say, abuse that was, violence that was done to them, or was it violence that they witnessed? Did they have problems with the legal system afterwards? Were they involved in any legal proceedings? Um, are there cultural concerns around how that trauma is viewed, or even how therapy is viewed? Does it do they think that if they're in therapy that makes them, a weak person, or because they have issues with whatever the traumatic event or events were, that makes them less than because they haven't been able to deal with it as well? Are there generational trauma issues to consider? Has this been going on from generation to generation and it's just acceptable? So the APA, I'll applaud them at least for this, that they have really looked at the therapy that they've been offering and how they have approached it, from an organizational standpoint, and said, we need something different. And I think that the increase in people who were experiencing PTSD symptoms, particularly coming off of the COVID lockdown, and people with mental health issues as a result of that, not only adults, but adolescents who went through that transition. I look at my son, he was in school, he was out of school, he was in school, he was out of school because, if they had a certain number of kids with COVID and with connections, they had to shut the school down. So even after the official lockdown, which was March of 2020, in September and October and November, he'd be in school for a week and a half and he'd be out of school for some time. So that transition and not knowing it caused a lot of concern, for a whole group of people. So trauma informed therapists have been, looking at this through looking at the interventions that have been needed through a different lens for a while. And it's it does my heart good that the American Psychology Association is now looking at this and realizing that everyone who deals with somebody who is trying to get past a traumatic event needs to be looked at through a certain lens, and that you can't, conventional therapies are not going to necessarily work for that person. They are really, I won't say pushing, but they have recognized the importance of EMDR and how effective it has been in working with people with CPTSD and PTSD. So the combination of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what most people think of as regular talk therapy, combined with EMDR, in addition to then also learning positive coping skills, grounding techniques, um, mindfulness, all those things that we talk about. The APA is definitely taking a trauma informed view of being able to, that therapists have to have a trauma informed view in looking at people who are trying to, recover from trauma. I know I am stumbling over my words today, guys, and I apologize for that. Hey, Patty, good to see you. Glad you joined us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's see. So, next on my list of latest in the news, and I may have spoken about this in the past, and this study is from 2024. So, it's a little over a year and a half old at this point. But I came across it again, and I just thought, since I was speaking about PTSD in other aspects of the news and things that have come up, that this study was important to note that they have looked at the genome. So they looked at the DNA of people, and they have actually been able to find, I think it was, they're saying, over 40 different genes that appear to play a role in causing PTSD. And on those 43 genes, there's almost 100 different locations that they've identified that could play a part or are playing a part in PTSD. And again, I think this speaks to the nature of the hard science finally catching up with what social science knows, that there are definitive changes that we all have when we go through trauma, those of us who are affected by trauma long term, and identifying that there's certain genes that could be involved in this and that there's potentially a genetic component to this. Not to say that you have these particular markers, you're going to suffer from PTSD if you have a traumatic event. It just means that you're more predisposed, kind of like they've looked at people with alcoholism and they've identified markers and said, if you have these particular genetic markers, you're more predisposed to alcoholism. It's just like somebody with can't speak today, obsessive compulsive disorder, uh, or even, um, now I guess I'll mention this now, bipolar. They've identified 36 different genes, I think, and well over 300 different locations for markers of bipolarism. Is that a word? I just made that up. Um, for bipolar disorder. So again, that it's a predisposition, just like they've already identified with schizophrenia, that there is a genetic component. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you're predisposed to get it. So if you don't have certain traumas in your life or you don't have certain triggers in your life, you're not, you can flow through uh, easier without developing the condition. But if certain things are in place, and there are a lot of things that have to do with this, like your social support, right? Uh, how how you deal with the event right after. It does not mean that you're absolutely going to develop PTSD or bipolar bipolar disorder. And DeAudrey asked, "Are these genes that we all have?" Yes, the genes that we all have. It's just looking at the DNA of people, and it's stating that there are different markers. It depends on how those genes. Um, I'm missing my word. There's one word that describes exactly what I want to say. Um, it's how those genes show up. They're It's been explained to me that, all our genes like have on off switches for different things, as do our cells. So, which switches are on and which switches are off in our genes? And some of that can be a genetic component as to whether or not, we're predisposed to be born with certain ones on or off. Some just may be on or off. That's just the way our bodies were put together. I'm leery to a degree of the hard sciences and the studies that are being done in regards to this. I understand that they're saying, the more we understand on an individual basis, we're going to be able to create individual treatments. I just worry from a pharmacological standpoint that there is going to be, I would say, a rush, but just like we experienced in the 80s and 90s with the antidepressants, it was, you have this, here's a pill for this. To get to a point where it says, oh, you've got PTSD, here's a pill for that. And we've been able to make it such that it works on your individual level. I think that there is great value in working through these issues on your own. And by on your own, I mean without relying on chemical additive, being able to process this information. Now, if that's done in conjunction with, taking something for a short-term basis, I'm certainly not against that. It's just that we have been stuck as a society for such a long time that if you have anxiety, here's an anxiety med. If you have depression, here's the depression meds that you can try. You got pain, we had opioids. And we discovered, well, that's not so great. So we are definitely still amongst the quick fix mentality, I think, and that's a generalization for society. And I just worry that this could be viewed as another way to, accomplish that. Oh, great. We've identified everything. Therefore, we can pinpoint what's wrong with you. Take a pill, and that fixes that. From a psychological standpoint, I just don't see long term chemical intervention as replacing being able to work through those traumatic memories and changing our neural pathways because we have properly incorporated those memories in our minds and changed our neuroplasticity because of our working through those issues versus having a chemical do it for us. I don't know if anybody else feels the same, but that's just kind of where I am. Hey, Co-Train. Hey, Lindsay. Welcome, welcome, welcome to both of you. Georgie says, I think I'd be okay with a magic pill if it actually worked. Chris asks, how can they make a pill completely specific for each person? You go to a pharmacy where they have the larger bottles of each med, and that for everyone that is on that med, and that's where we are right now. There are compounds that they can make, putting different pills together in certain ratios that work better for certain people. The more science identifies different things in our DNA, the farther science goes with this, the quicker they're able to do this. They might be able to in the future. You might have a machine that has X, Y, and Z compounds, and based on your individual profile, it puts it all together in a certain way and says, "Here you go. Here's your pill." I don't know. 20 years from now, 50 years from now, where will we be? I, I I'm not sure, but I'm still not convinced, and maybe it's the old-fashioned piece in me that a pill can replace the value that there is in working through these issues, in putting things into perspective. Um, could a pill eventually do all that work for you? And, you're on it for 6 months, and the result is your brain's put everything into perspective and you understand everything perfectly well. Who knows? Again, 50 years from now, who knows if that could happen? Um, for me, I guess that's a little farther science fiction than my brain can handle at this point in time. But we'll see. I guess, time will tell. What else do I have to bring to you? I've got some other stories. But while we're on PTSD and CPTSD, and this was a story from a study from 2024 as well, but I thought it was really interesting and it went along with what we're talking about with PTSD and CPTSD, is that they studied, let's see, they did a study of kids, and it was a smaller study, meaning it was a few hundred kids, 260 kids. So we're not talking about thousands. But there was a study that looked at kids and trauma, and they studied 260 kids aged 8 to 17, and they did assessments with them at 2 weeks and 9 weeks post traumatic event. And you need to understand that these assessments are going to be reliant on the information that they're getting back from the kids. But what they found, and I think this is interesting, we've talked about the different uh, things that affect whether or not you're going to suffer traumatic effects from a traumatic event, right? And these can be things such as the severity of the event, how long it was going on, how bad the single event was, whether it was trauma that you witnessed versus trauma that was done to you, to your body, the age at which it occurred, the support system that you have around you, the cultural differences that may affect how you view uh, an event. So, whether you even view it as traumatic or not, all of these things can affect the severity and actually whether or not you develop traumatic effects, for how long afterwards you have them, whether you suffer them long term or whether you suffer them for a couple of weeks and you bounce back. Well, what this study found is for these kids, that how the kids remembered the traumatic event and how they perceived themselves after the traumatic event were the strongest indicators as to whether or not they were going to have long-term traumatic effects. So what that means is, to me, the way I look at that is, let's take the second one first, how they perceive themselves afterwards. I think this has a lot to do with the support system that they have, how people are treating them afterwards, how I think how they viewed themselves beforehand as well is going to affect how they're viewing themselves afterwards. So, do they still feel safe? They had this traumatic event, but in general, do they feel safe in their life? How do they perceive themselves in regards to this traumatic event? Is it something that they're carrying with them, or can they see it as an incident that happened and separate that from who they are now? So how about yourself? How did that traumatic event make you feel? Was it just that it made you feel scared and anxious, and it was something that was, it just was an overwhelming situation? Or do you perceive yourself as less than now? Do you perceive yourself as being at fault for that event? And the other prong of that, how kids remember the event, to me, this goes to how the event is framed in their mind. And I think the people around you can be extremely effective in helping that child frame those memories. So, how they look at those memories. If you have a good support system around you and people who are helping to tell you, listen, this is something that happened, these are separate from you, you're not at fault, this was scary, but it's over, right? Because those long term traumatic effects are our body's inability to escape the trauma. We're not able to separate it. It's still affecting us. And I think that that especially is going to be easier if you've got a singular traumatic event, which I think this was focused on, at least the way the summary of the study that I read. I didn't read the study itself, but the summary of the study that I read, it seemed to be that they were looking at people who had a singular event. Because I think that if you look at how you view the memories and how you view yourself afterwards, if you're talking about CPTSD, where you've got months or years of cumulative effect or cumulative traumatic events, and how that makes you feel, how you view all of that stuff that went on, it makes sense to me. That's going to be much harder to separate because we're beat down by that time. I mean, people with CPTSD, we have internalized that trauma to such a degree that it is very hard to feel like we're safe in our own bodies, to feel like we're safe in our environment, uh, to be able to separate that from ourselves and that we weren't at fault. So it makes sense to me that they are saying that these two things, how kids perceive the event and how they perceive themselves afterwards, were stronger indicators of whether or not there was going to be trauma, stronger than the severity of the trauma itself and their age at the trauma. I'm just looking at your comments. Crystal says, take a look at the data gathered in the few years after the Be Brave Ranch, which is an organization in Canada. The results of this treatment are astonishing. It's an intense year-long treatment with inpatient and outpatient. I know you've spoken about this before, Crystal, as well as several other people in Canada, and I have to congratulate the people who put the Be Brave Ranch together. Just an absolutely amazing institution that is helping trauma victims heal, trauma survivors heal. Hang on one second, guys. My son is looking at me, so I will be right back. Vale. Oops. I don't know. Was I still on mic for that? I thought I hit the mute, but it didn't look like it was, so. Oh, that's so interesting. Krista, so the lady who started it, Glory Meldrum, she's a survivor and was a recipient of the Women Changing the World Awards. Oh, and Crystal, I have just been this week has been crazy for me with work, and yesterday I had such vertigo. It was just awful, but I did get your email, Crystal, and I certainly am interested in the person who you know in Victoria. Um, so please send me a follow-up email with that information. If you have an email for this person, I would love to hook up with them. I mean, I'm in Victoria, I think, for about 4 days, so I've certainly got some time. So please send me a follow-up email with information on this person and identify whoever you were thinking of. So I want to say that. Um, and before we continue on with the rest of our latest in psychological trauma news, I can just say that I cannot believe that I'm less than a week from leaving. I haven't packed. I still haven't gotten a dress. Yeah, I'm hoping that tomorrow I am going to go dress shopping. And next week I am going to be um, getting ready for, getting packing and all of that kind of stuff. So, oh, so it originally was for kids. So we're not sure whether the Be Brave Ranch is for adults or not. Um, I'm sure if you go to what, like bebrave.ca, or I'm not sure what your Canada version of that is. Oh, Gloria Meldrum is the person you're referring to. Okay, shoot me if you have any contact information for her, that would be great. If you can shoot that to me, I would really appreciate that. Hey, Judge, how are you doing this afternoon? Hope you're warm. I'm freezing my patootie off here in Michigan. We are definitely past our Indian summer and are into our fall weather. It is pretty chilly here today. I would imagine we're in the 50s somewhere, low 50s. At least that's what it's feeling like outside today, and not much sun. So definitely feeling. My cats will definitely help. Yeah, I know. That's why I asked if you were warm in Texas. Much better than here. Will my cats help by sitting in the suitcase? They certainly will help me pack by doing that. My mom actually got me a travel case that, like, when it's empty, it folds all up on itself. It's not the foldable one that I want. There's one that you can put like 2 weeks worth of stuff in, and the way it's made, it, like, folds all out, but then when you fold it all back up, it looks like a duffel bag, basically. But I have a backpack and I have that pack, or I can switch to a standard roller case that will still be TSA approved size for carry-on. So I'm gonna pack in one and see how things work, and if it doesn't work, then I'll look at switching to a standard suitcase. But if you guys don't know, rolling your clothes versus just folding them, you can fit more in something by doing that. That's military style packing. So my dad taught me that. So if if I just fold my clothes and I look like I need more room, I'm going military style. Plus, actually, when you roll your clothes, you don't get the wrinkle lines. It's so weird. So we'll see. We'll see. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Judge says I'm going to be in Montana full time next year. The cabin is almost done. Wow. That is going to be a super big change weather-wise for you. Um, and environment-wise, right? Going from Texas to Montana. But that's awesome. I'd love a cabin like that I could escape to for a couple of weeks and kind of be in the wilderness and have dozens or hundreds of acres surrounding me with no neighbors or whatnot. For that would just be, I think that would be really lovely. Lindsay's in Nova Scotia, and it is chilly at this point. Yeah, I think most of us Northerners have gotten the chill, and it's not going to go away until next May. It's only going to get colder from here. So if we want warmth, we're going to have to head south, which is not in my travel schedule at this point. So we'll see. All right, what else do we have got going in the news? There are a couple of other really interesting things that have surfaced. One is a study that was done in the United Kingdom, and it was an ACE study that they did, which is ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And as the original ACE study has shown, there is a definitive connection between the number of ACEs that you have. There's 9, and in some places I've seen 10 categories. The more ACEs that you have, the higher likelihood that you will develop certain conditions, certain health conditions later on in life. And what this particular study showed, they did 16,000 participants in this, which is very close to the original ACE study, which was around 17,500 or somewhere in there. These were men and women. And so they were looking at the connection between the number of ACEs that you have and your later health issues. And they found that at at 50 or older, but particularly at 50 seemed to be the age at which they, if you were going to develop some of these complications, they were definitely going to show by age 50. And they found that men and women, the higher your ACE score, the more likely you were to develop mental health issues such as depression and anxiety, as well as severe chronic pain. That they found a definitive link between those. But what was really interesting to me, I mean, that's something that the original ACE study did find out. But what was really interesting to me was that they found that women also, the higher their ACE score, the more likely they were to have gastrointestinal issues, asthma, and bronchitis. So to me, that was fascinating, in particular the gastrointestinal issues, right? Um, Anything to do with your tummy and your intestines, whether it's IBS or Crohn's or any of the other conditions that affect that. And other studies have shown that women are more likely to suffer gastrointestinal issues than men. And I'm certain somebody is got a study out there now or is going to create a study to figure out why this happens, right? Why are women twice as likely to develop PTSD? Why are women more likely to develop gastrointestinal issues if they have a high ACE score than men? What is it about us? And I'm going to say hormones. It is the biggest difference between men and women. And if they're particularly looking at age 50 and beyond as to when these things will definitively show up, think about age 50. Most women, I'm going to say absolute majority of women are going to be at least in perimenopause by the time that they're 50. Some people are going to be into menopause. Just depends on where we are, right? And so our hormones are doing wackadoodle things. Our estrogen levels are going down, our progesterone levels are going down, and we've got all sorts of weird things going on in our body, emotionally as well as physiologically. So from that standpoint, it kind of makes sense that women have these different issues or are more likely to suffer these other issues than men because they don't go through the severity of changes. Their testosterone levels decrease as they get older, but you've got one factor, whereas we have so many. Judge says, I don't understand why so many people are sick. I'm almost sick. I'm almost 57. I'm on zero medication and my cholesterol is perfect. Well, congratulations. I think that that is absolutely fabulous. And Judge, there can be so many different reasons for this. Did you suffer any childhood trauma? Did you suffer trauma later on in your life? What has your general support system been like? What has your physical fitness been like throughout life? Uh, what is your diet like? Is your gut health uh, doing well? If your gut health is doing well, this brain gut connection is a definite thing, guys. So do you eat a lot of prepackaged foods? Do you eat a lot of raw foods, organic foods? What's your individual DNA? There are so many different factors that can go into our potential to suffer things in life, right? And how we react to them. So I congratulate those people who are like you, Judge, and are at an older age and are doing so well. I had hoped to be one of those people. I know that I've got some changes to go through. Um, I got to get my gut health in better condition. It's better than it was, but it's not where it really needs to be. My exercise level needs to increase. My muscle mass needs to increase. And with that, I really do think that I can at least decrease or get off of my Lyrica. Unfortunately, my body loves to develop scar tissue. I actually saw the dermatologist the other day, and like I have a little lump in my lip. And why? It's scar tissue because of the damage I did when I fell and, messed up my top lip. I also messed up the inside of my lip. And that is why I've actually developed scar tissue. My body loves to develop scar tissue. So, and I develop it at like twice the normal rate. It's crazy. It just says everyone has some sort of childhood trauma. Everyone has some sort of adult trauma. I spent 8 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. I eat no processed foods. That is awesome. Like I said, there's so many factors on how we're able to process traumatic events, how we're able to be positive and stay positive in our life. And some people are better at it than others. Some people are genetically predisposed to handle things differently. And I think that that's awesome. Lindsay had asked a question about the ACEs study, and yes, you can find it online. I also did a live uh, pretty early in, it's got to be within probably, I think, the first 10 lives that I did, where it was on the ACEs study, and that's right in the title. And I actually went through it all, and I have a link in there to the ACEs study. And it's just a series of questions that you answer yes or no to, and you add up how many ACEs you have at the end of it. But if you're interested, I would watch our ACEs live that I did because I did go through the original study how it was created and what it found out at that point in time. And that was done in 1998. And there have been some other ACEs studies that they've done along the way. Philadelphia did an ACEs study where they focused on lower socioeconomic classes. Um, and now the UK has just done one as well. And let me just say again, thank you guys for supporting each other. I know you've been having a little bit of a conversation back and forth here while I've been talking, and it just makes my heart flutter to see you guys supporting each other like this. And that's the goal of the channel, right? For survivors to find each other, connect with each other, and build community. And my job to provide you with trauma related education. Lindsay, you're in perimenopause, just starting. Yeah, it's an interesting time. I gotta say, I've been in perimenopause for I think about 3 years now. Maybe going on four. I think when I was 49 it started, or we thought maybe, but definitely by the time I hit 50. So uh it's interesting. It's weird. I knew I had officially 100% hit it when the night sweats started. And thankfully for me, hormone replacement therapy has been absolutely wonderful. So putting estrogen back in my body, I don't have the night sweats anymore. Um, we'll see how it goes through actual menopause as to whether it helps with hot flashes and all of that stuff. But I don't feel any different in terms of any additional mental struggles or problems, in regards to that, um, since I've been on it. So 100%, 100% has been helping me. You're 43? Wow. Yeah. Perimenopause can start in as early as your 30s. Some people have started in their early 30s, but more mid to late 30s is also common. Uh, Definitely, it's more common in the 40s. Hormone changes, that may even out. Um, and I think too, it might be how your HRT is delivered into your system. Some people take pills, some people take creams. I have a patch I change every 3 to 4 days. It's waterproof. I can shower with it. For me, it works really well. I don't have to remember to do it every day. I just have a timer, um, a reminder on my phone that says, change your patch today. Because otherwise I'd forget every 3 to 4 days. That's, a harder thing to keep track of. So really, I really love it. It's estradiol, and it's a very common hormone replacement. So I personally would recommend it. Um, but you need to talk to your doctor about it. It depends on you. Definitely need to have your estrogen levels checked to see where you're at, because there's, different levels of estrogen patches of hormone replacement um, that you can get. So definitely work with your doctor on it as to what method is best for you and what type of hormone replacement is best for you. But it is the research, at least that I have come up with, have seen is the earlier you get involved with hormone replacement, the better. That you do not have to wait until you get into menopause. to do it. And it actually, if you wait in your late 60s or so, it's your effective. it- You've suffered so long. So HRT is free for all Irish women. Oh my gosh. Congratulations. That is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, I think that most health systems are better than the American health system. But this is where I live. This is what I've got going on. All right. We are at 4 o'clock, and I have a couple of other headlines, couple other things that I wanted to cover with you guys that I thought were really interesting. One is a study into cannabis and CPTSD. And they have found that for adults who still have effects from CPTSD, that cannabis can actually worsen your symptoms, particularly paranoia. Um, I think paranoia is a less common effect from CPTSD, and they didn't define paranoia. So I can only go on, kind of a layperson's understanding of it. Um, they could be likening it to hypervigilance. I'm not sure. So I wasn't able to find the study itself to get into their exact wording. So that's just kind of a tidbit, just throwing it out there. But the more studies that are done on cannabis, the more they're finding for certain people. So keep that in mind because this really is very individualized, that it can actually worsen symptoms of depression and anxiety, and pain versus helping. And so you really need to be aware, if it's something that you're taking. If you find that it's not helping, it really, it's not that you need a different strain. It's not that you need a higher dosage. It could be that it just doesn't work for you. Or if you think your symptoms are getting worse, it very well could be making your symptoms worse. So I just throw it out there as just a tidbit for you to put in the back of your mind, if it's something that you do or that you're thinking about doing, that there um, are some potential downfalls uh, to going that route. Well, thanks for dropping in, Judge. I really appreciate you being here. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And what else? Um, oh, so this last one that I have for you, and I gotta pull this up because there's some pieces of it that I want to read to you. So there is, and this just came out in the news this month, there is a new center that is being established in South Carolina. Um, it is going to be a COBRA Center, which stands for the Center for Biomedical Research Excellence. And their goal is to help build resilience after trauma. It's being called the Bright Center, which stands for, thankfully, that they figured out an acronym because the full name is Building Resistance Through Innovative Interventions to Promote Growth and Health After Trauma. So it is going to be called the Bright Center. I was not able to find an estimate as to when they think they're going to be open, but their goal really is combining science, hard science, um, technology science with therapy options. And from that, one of the things that they are creating is a smartphone app for sexual assault survivors. And I want to read to you, AI has been helping, um, it's being used in therapy, AI bots that you can talk to. Home-based therapy has become more accessible now that therapists will use the internet to do virtual visits. And there is an increasing number of smartphone apps to help with therapy. Well, this app is going to be a real time support. So they're going to begin testing. It's not out available right now, but it is going to be used for um, traumatic stress and substance abuse um, in their sexual assault portion of their center. They said they've adapted a 5-session writing intervention for traumatic stress to include coping skills for substance misuse. The app can help providers deliver intervention and offers survivors support in real time through their phones, increasing the access to evidence based care after sexual assault. They are also looking at improving the availability of evidence based home visiting models that deter child maltreatment. And so, what this other app is basically like a parenting app. It's for parents and to help them deal with the stresses of their life and the problems that they have so that they're not taking it out on their children, so that they're dealing with it in a positive way, so that they have access to support systems that can help them navigate the difficulties that they're going through. That focus I am really excited about because when I think about CPTSD and the amount of kids who are mistreated, neglected, actively, physically, emotionally, mentally abused, and the problems that that causes later on in life, if we're able to stem that tide, that that's huge. That helps reduce the number of adolescents and adults that are dealing with traumatic effects. And just like we talk about, education for parents and kids in regards to sexual assault, recognizing it, recognizing grooming, recognizing when there's issues, problematic behaviors before it comes to an actual sexual assault. If we can stem it at the root there, the amount of lives that we can truly save is tremendous. So, if there's an app like this, and if it works like they hope it will, if they're able to even reach a portion of people, I think that that's extremely positive. So, I'm really excited to see what comes out of this center and their combination of science and technology and uh, digital programming in terms of being able to help traumatic event survivors navigate their lives and get the treatment that they need and get the this help and support that they need. So this is something that I'm going to poke back into sometime next year. We'll see if I can find a better timeline as to when the center might be open. when they hope to get these projects further off the ground. So that's what I got for you guys today. I know I didn't have a description in the video for today, but I plan on working on, if not next week, the week after. Really, the first week that I am gone is I have so much channel work to do, and that truly is going to be my focus for the first 2 or 3 days. Okay, maybe not the first day. Let's say the second and the third and the fourth. I'm going to be focusing a lot on my LinkedIn stuff and on channel things. I have, as I spoke before, I've got a lot of contacts that I've made now through LinkedIn, and I'm really working those connections for people who can help me on a sexual assault in the military and the PTSD that results from that. And I envision this as part of a series. And depending on how that goes, I'm hoping maybe sometime in November, but maybe December is more likely. I'll have to see how things, see what the fallout is for the from the book launch and the networking that I'm going to be doing at the America Summit, and see kind of how my plate looks at that point in time. I think November is going to be a really interesting month. There's a lot of things coming down the pike for me, a lot of organizational things, and we'll see how much content that I'm able to get out in terms of these newer projects that I want. But I'll still be here on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Next Saturday, I will be in Canada. I will be streaming live from Victoria, Canada for Laugh Saturday. So next Saturday is Laugh Saturday, guys. If you have any ideas as to what you want to cover on that, we've done ER, we've done stupid criminals, we've done funny signs, and I have an idea. I think it depends on how many websites I'm able to come up with. I got to write this down somewhere. Hang on. I got to write this down or I'm going to forget. Idea. Because December is going to be Dad Joke Saturday. All right. December's um, Laugh Saturday, which will be, let me pull my calendar up because I have no idea off the top of my head. Let's see, when December 6th will be Laugh Saturday. December 6th is going to be Dad Joke Saturday. So if you have dad jokes to send in, if you have ideas for next week, a wedding comedy. Oh, there's an idea. Okay, I got Laugh Saturday. I'm writing this down, guys. Laugh Saturday. Let's see. Okay, and my idea. See what I can come up with for that. All right. What's Canadian slang? I don't see the Canadian slang that you put. We'll see. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Janet is definitely going to give me the full Canadian experience. Um, try your different try your different foods, which there's a few of them that are specific to Canada. I will be looking forward to that and just experiencing the West Coast. The only time I've been to the Pacific Ocean has been San Diego, and so that's at the opposite end of the coast, Southern California. So this time I'm going to be in Victoria and seeing the Pacific Ocean. So I'm really excited about it, guys. I can't wait. Definitely won't be missing last Saturday, unless Janet's Wi-Fi goes on the wig. That is the only thing that will keep me from you next Saturday. So we'll still have Wednesday. I will be around this coming Wednesday, and we'll see what happens then. That'll be the 29th, I think, October 29th. Don't have my topic picked out, but if you haven't, like this video end, before you are out of here. Subscribe if you haven't, hit that all bell for notifications. And if you found some of this content interesting, just share out the video and any of the other videos that I have, whether it's in the video section or in my. Hey, as soon as I wrote buffering, I came back. Since I didn't have an intro, I'm not going to have an outro. I don't know what's going on with StreamYard, but my banners are still there, but for some reason the videos that I loaded before, so my intro and my outro are not there. I'm gonna have to reload them again. So Wednesday, we should be back to normal with a regular intro and a regular outro. But for today, I'm just gonna sign off and I will say, remember, you are worthy, you are valuable, and you are loved just the way you are for who you are. Hugs and love from me. Ah, I will see you on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Surviving in it. That was a great ending. Surviving together, never alone. Have a good one, guys. Bye.